So I do want to start by reading what B read in the meditation because I thought it was very profound. It's Beyond Words and Thoughts, from the Metaphysical Consciousness to the Mystical, and it's by Joel Goldsmith. No one is ever going to be attracted to a spiritual message by hearing someone preach it, because preaching reaches only as far as the human mind. Living it reaches the soul, and that is why all the preaching there has been for 6,000 years has not changed men. They are still out dropping bombs on one another. They are still out lying and cheating and defrauding in spite of all the preaching. There must be an end to preaching. There must be an end to telling other men how to live. There must come an understanding of the nature of God as individual identity, locking that understanding up within themselves, letting it shine out, and then feeding it slowly and gradually to those who seek it. Absolutely. However, please stay, because, it's what I do for a living. I preach. So what Brene Brown says is, here's what I think integrity is. It's choosing courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy, and practicing your values. And so integrity is part of the word integrate. I didn't know that until I was reading about what I was going to talk about today, that it comes from the same root, and it's a Latin word. It comes from the same root, integrate. And so when we talk about integrity, it's about integrating our inner life, who we are on the inside, and integrating it with how we present ourselves to the world. And sometimes that can be a huge disconnect. I call it walking your talk. And people will know right away, sometimes, maybe not always, if someone is walking their talk. There's a lot of people who stand on a stage and talk to you about this philosophy and then lead a life that is not necessarily in alignment with what we teach. And yet, that is their choice, right? For me, I can't stand up here and talk about something that is not true and not as a value to me. I just can't. There's a disconnect for me to do that. And so I spend most of my time figuring out what's important to me, and then how do I live that and display that, not for you guys, for me. Because it's about me and how I'm in alignment with what I believe this philosophy teaches and how it changed my life. How does that show up for me? And so if we were to look at integrity psychologically instead of philosophically, how would we do that? If we all know, we see people of integrity and we know it, right? We absolutely know it. And yet it's very hard to define what that means. What is that? What is that energy that they're putting out that draws us in? And so what is that, and how do we individually or collectively get that in our life? How do we become people of integrity? So the first practice, if you will, is to really decide to take some time with God. And what I mean by that is spend some time in the quiet, listening to that inner voice that's within you, that is calling to you all the time, to listen to that voice. And then to decide, what are my values? What do I hold dear and most valuable in my heart? Because that's what integrity is. It's living your values. And here's the thing about values. Nobody gets to tell you what your values are, right? And so when you're sitting, listening, it's to decide, is that value mine? Or is that a value that was passed down to me either by my parents or a teacher or some significant person in my life? And is it still something that I hold dear? And if it's not, to look at that and say, maybe that's not a value of mine. But to really start to do that inner work each and every one of us. If we want a world that works for everyone, which is what we say at a global level within Centers for Spiritual Living, a world that works for everyone. That is not a world where I get to go to a country and tell them how to live. That is a country I go to and I honor the people that live there and what their practices are and how they choose to live their life, even though it may be way out of my comfort zone in some countries to go like, wow, I wouldn't live like that. And yet it is part of their culture. And how many times do we as citizens of the world think we know the answers for everybody in the world? We absolutely think that, it's got to be our way. And that's not true. That is not true. Things serve their purpose where they are at the time. And so to realize, if we really get to the point that we can accept that the universe is never against us, it is always for us. If we can really accept that as part of the truth of who we are and what we're experiencing, then you start to look at life differently. Because if you really take the time to go within, you will realize that everything that is happening in life is life happening. And then we put the meaning on it, don't we? We decide. That's right, that's wrong, that's good, that's bad. We file it away because that's what we do as humans. And I am not saying that if there's a crime committed, there should not be justice done. However, to look at things differently and to come to that place within you is everything has a reason. And at a human level, I may not get it. I may not understand it. But at a human level, to stand in that place and think about, why is this happening? What's the greater good that will come of it? Because I have said this more than once. If there is a pile of horse poo, there's a pony in there somewhere. And when we're in the middle of the horse poo, we can't see the pony. But eventually it will become evident to us. So to do that work within, to decide what your values are. And there's a lot of readings that say find your purpose. I personally have come to the realization is my purpose is to be a human on this planet and to be kind to other people. I think that's it for all of us. To recognize the God within everybody else and be kind to those people, regardless of what button they're pushing. To be kind and loving and caring. To have empathy. Your passion. To live your passion, I think, is different. To live your passion is to find out, what am I here to do? With that purpose of being kind and being part of humanity and part of that one. What's my passion and how do I get to live that out and express it? And so to really take time to do that inner work, because you can't live in integrity if you don't spend time figuring out for yourself what you value, and then is the world around you supporting that value? And so while I was in meditation today and I was thinking about where am I out of integrity with my value and what I believe is important and how I am spending my money, who can guess what I came up with? Amazon. Now, it's a big company and it does a wonderful service. And if you work for Amazon, yay. However, for me personally, if it is true, and I would need to investigate this, however, if it is true that it is a company that is not paying taxes in the United States, then I might want to consider spending my money somewhere else with a company that aligns with my values. Now, I said Amazon because it's what came to my head, because trust me, they like me and I like them. And so I would need to dig a little bit deeper and find out, is there an alignment there? Or am I going to have to start to get in my car and go to Costco? Or order online from Costco? I never even consider that. Do you remember when copiers, it used to be, we didn't refer to them as copiers, we referred to them as Xerox, because they were the market leader. And that's what Amazon is in this country and around the world. It's a market leader. I don't even think of other options on how to order things, because I have a Prime account. I have Amazon Video. I have a Kindle. It is part of my life. And yet, I need to decide, is it pushing up against a value that I have, or do I not have that value? Because here's the deal. I'm either out of integrity, or the value that I say is so important to me. Probably not. My value might be convenience. And yet we get back to what Brene Brown said. It's choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy. Dang her. Wish I really hadn't read that. But it's something for me to consider, and that's all I'm asking all of you to do, is as you do your inner work, just consider, how are you living with integrity, and is it supporting your values? And if it's not, then look for different options. Look for different ways to spend your money, or different, there's actually an app now that you can go into a store and scan the barcode. You don't even have to type it in. Scan the barcode on the app, and it will tell you up the line who produces that product from the very beginning to the end. And then you can look at that and see, are those people that I am in line with, or do I want to get a different product? So it's just things to consider, because we say that we're in integrity. I say that I walk my talk, and then something like that pops up, and I'm like, ooh. If that's really one of your values, Gayle, then you better reconsider. Either it is a value, or and if it is, then you're totally out of integrity, or maybe it's not a value. No matter what Brene Brown says, maybe I'll just give that value up. So then once you decide, these are my values, this is who I am, this is how I present myself to the world, this is what's important to me, and I will show up in that in every area of my life, then you start doing that on the outside. How do you show up in the world? How do you treat other people? If you say your value is kindness, how often are you unkind? If you say your value is love, how often are you unloving? If you say your value is to be honest, how often do you gossip? Now, when I'm saying all these things, these are things I'm saying to myself, just so you know. How often do I do those things when I say that these values are so important to me? And how do I shift into that place of really being totally walking in my talk? Because part of that is how we break promises. And some of the promises, and I said this in Prac 1, Dave and Courtney might remember. I said this in Prac 1, and everybody kind of scolded me for it. But I said, one place I am out of integrity is I always say, I want to lose weight. I have a specific weight I want to be at. Now, if I really wanted to be at that weight, I'd be at it. I know how to get there. I've done it before. So there's a disconnect from what I say I want and how I behave. And so that's breaking a promise to yourself. And I think that we have to realize that when we break a promise to ourselves, we are breaking a promise to the most important person in our life. And we forget that. we forget that if we want to be loved, we have to love ourselves. If we want to display kindness, the first person we need to be kind with is ourselves. If we say something is important to us and we want something, then we need to do the steps to display it, or maybe give up the idea that you need to be a certain weight and just love who you are exactly where you're at. I'm still working on that one. I still am. You know, I try every day. Oh, I love my life. I love my body. No, really, I love my body. You know, I should just say that 100 times a day. You know how they say, I surrender to the power and presence of God within me. When I took that class with Diane Harmony, she said, I want you to say that 100 times a day, every day. And I did. And maybe a good one for me would just be, I love my body. 100 times a day, every day, until I really absorb that and I start loving my body. Without attachment to, oh, and then when I get that, the weight will just drop off of me. Because that's the thought that went through my head. And I share that with you because that is one of those niggles that I have. You know, from a small child, whatever I heard, however I played that in my life, I have always spent more than enough money to feed more than enough homeless people on the next great diet, the next great food plan, the next great. So these are things that I need to really look at in my life. Where am I absolutely in integrity, and where is there things that I really need to look at and go, my outer life is not reflecting what my inner life believes I am and I should be. Because that's integrity. When you really get, and nobody gets to tell you, when you really understand, this is who I am, this is what I value, this is how I want to be in the world, this is where I'm going to spend my money, and then you do that, that's when you're in integrity. That's when you're really in alignment. And maybe all of you have that, and I'm the only person in the whole room that has things to work on, but that's okay. That's okay. And if you're somebody that has things to work on, then really look at it. And how do you shift? How do you change and become somebody that really is in integrity, that it's important to you? Because it is important to me to be in integrity. And I didn't realize that until my husband said to me, not too long after we met, I love that you are a person of integrity. And I wanted to cry, because as somebody who drank and used, trust me, I was never in integrity when I was that person. You can't be that person and be in integrity. There's a huge disconnect there. And so to have somebody recognize that I was shifting my life and I was now somebody you could trust, that I held important my values. And so for me, it's now taking it to another level and realizing that we don't get to choose what integrity looks like for another person. That's their job. That's their work. Does their inner match their outer? And only you're going to know that. Each and every one of you. And so, how do we live with greater integrity? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do you show up in life and make that happen? So again, a person that keeps their promises. And not just to each other. I think the most important is, do you keep your promises to yourself? When you say you're going to do something, do you do it? Now, there are people who constantly run late, and they're still in integrity because they know they run late, right? I might say they're not in integrity because I have something in me that says I have to be on time. I think it was because I was a telephone operator, and you had to plug in at exactly the right time, and you had to raise your hand to go to the bathroom So that was drilled into me at a very young age. And yet for other people, time isn't as important. And so for me to judge somebody else is not fair, is it? Because that might not be important to them. Does that make sense? So I guess my what I'm trying to say here is, don't assume because you hold something important and dear that somebody you're in relationship with or somebody that you're a friend with holds that same value or intention important and dear, because they might not. And you know who gets disappointed? You do. They're not disappointed, they're fine. You're disappointed because you had an expectation and they didn't have that expectation. And you might not have even shared with them you had the expectation. And so there's this huge disconnect. So we have to learn to allow people to have their own values and to live their life out in their own truth. I think that's one of the most important things about integrity, is you don't get to judge what's important to other people. So keeping your promises and then showing compassion and sympathy and empathy towards other people, that's one of those human things, is it not? And I think right now, around the world, I used to think it was just in the United States, around the world, we have got great division on what this is right, no, this is right, right? We've got two different sides, and we're not talking to each other anymore because we're so stuck on our side that we can't see the other person has their values, has their intent, and I may not understand them, I may not agree with them, and I should give them the space to be who they are. And I should give them the space to believe what they believe. And I should give them the space to hold that as their truth. Now that's not saying I have to say to that person, oh yeah, I agree with you. And I can find a better way to be with them than saying you're wrong. Right? I can say, wow, tell me more. I don't think I understand exactly how you came to that conclusion. Or I could just say, if it's one of those people that I know we're not going to agree on this ever, gee, that's interesting. I don't believe that, and I think we should not have this discussion any further. So there are ways for us to rebuild that bridge of communication with each other, to reconnect heart to heart, soul to soul, mind to mind. And it comes from identifying for yourself, who are you? Who are you on the inside? What do you value? What's your passion? What do you hold really strongly as, I'm not moving from this spot? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's fun, if it's fast, if it's easy. This is right, and this is how I'm going to be in the world because it's important to me. And then how do I display that out into the world to other people? Because once I do that, then I'm in alignment. Then I'm walking my talk. Then I can be that bright light. Energetically, I am who I say I am. And there's no misstep. There's no like, not quite feeling it there. Does that make sense? So I invite you all this week to spend some time in your meditation, in your spiritual practice, or if you're not doing any of that, start spending some time just asking yourself, what's important to me? What would I walk through fire to protect? What would I absolutely never in my life do, no matter how much money somebody offered me? That's how you can decide, is it a value or is it it would be nice if I was that way, but for $2 million, I don't know, maybe. Right? Because we like money. And so just to ask yourself, just to do a little values check, I say this is valuable, is it? And then once you decide what your values are, then ask yourself, am I that person out in the world? Or am I the person out in the world who I think everybody wants me to be? And what I will tell you is, When you can be the person that you value, it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. Sometimes it can get lonely. Sometimes you can be just that person all by yourself thinking, nope, I'm not shifting from this. And hold that ground. Hold it in prayer. Hold it knowing that it's important to you and you shouldn't have to give it up. So let's pray. Mother, Father, God, Spirit, right here, right now, that power, that presence, that one that is over us, around us, through us, as us, it is that thing itself. It knows only truth. It is changeless. And what I know for each of us is that God is all of us. And we are part of it. And in our humanness, we allow ourselves to come back home. Come back to that place within us that knows the truth of who we are. To allow ourselves to sit in that divine light and to present to ourselves, this is important to me. This is something regardless. I will sit, I will stand, I will not move. That I am in alignment, body, spirit, and soul with this truth that I hold dear to my heart. And then I know for each one of us, as we identify those values, those God qualities within us, that we say, yes, that is who I am. That is who I choose to be. Then we look at our life and how do we present ourselves to the world? How do we live out those values day in and day out? And as we do that, we become more connected, more aligned, more open to the consciousness of abundance. That is the truth of who we are. And as we become more open to that, it automatically displays in the outer world as the prosperity in all of our lives, be it spiritual, be it financial, be it physical, be it emotional. Prosperity is ours. And so that is what I know today. I know that that integrity that lives within me, that I call forth in my values, that today I choose to not only know it within, I display it without. And I gift that to each person here. So I say thank you, Father, Mother, God, Spirit, for allowing me to be that expression of truth for myself right here, right now, to hold myself accountable for who I am and how I show up, and to not waver, no matter the cost, to hold that truth, to be that person. I turn all of these words over knowing that as it is spoken, it is done. God has said yes, because that's what it does. And it is in that yes, that vibration of good, that I let go, I let God. And together we say, and so it is.